Start recording. Camera chooser. Stop recording. Voiceover off.
Alrighty, hello everybody. We are back yet again for another round of Here's Hank by Hold the Phone, Henry Winkler and Lynn Oliver, illustrated by Scott Garrett. So once again, we are coming to you live from the Wettlaufer dining room. The acoustics are a little bit echoey in here, but it's the best place for me to, try and read a book on a giant table. So, without further ado, here's Hank. You Can't Drink a Meatball Through a Straw by Henry Winkler and Lynn Oliver, illustrated by, you guessed it, Scott Garrett. Alrighty, we're off. Chapter 1. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, I yelled at the top of my lungs. That pizza's here. How do you know, my best friend Frankie? Townsend asked. I don't hear the doorbell ringing. My nose knows, I told him. I can sniff out pepperoni a mile away. It was Friday, pizza night. Frankie and my other best friend, Ashley Wong, were sitting in my living room playing this card game we made up called Florida Coconuts. I've explained the rules to you, but they don't make any sense, even to us. It involves dropping a deck of cards on the loser's head instead of a real coconut, which would leave a pretty big lump. I got up and ran to the front door. Our dog Cheerio followed me. He can sniff out pepperoni a mile away too. I taught him that. My mom was there, balancing a huge pizza box in her hands. My younger sister Emily was next to her, holding a paper bag that smelled like Italian salad and garlic rolls. Standing next to her was a tall girl wearing a white chef's hat. Mom, I've never been so glad to see you in my whole life, I said. Emily, I'm not that happy to see you. And what's with that crazy hat? I have no idea who you are. Hank, Mom said, coming into our apartment. This is your cousin, Judith Ann. Remember? I told you she was coming in from Chicago to spend the weekend with us. We're hosting her while her parents are away at a business conference. Whoops, I answered. That must have slipped right through my brain and out my left ear. Or maybe it was my right ear. But who cares when there's pizza involved? I reached out and took the box from my mom's hands and headed for the dining room table. My dad brought plates and a big roll of paper towel from the kitchen. It was going to be our usual Friday pizza feast and movie night. Dig in, Judith Ann, I called to her. Take off your crazy hat and grab a slice while it's hot. Judith Ann walked over to the dining room table and stared at our pizza. No thanks, she said. I don't eat that type of pizza. Oh, my dad said. Are you allergic to wheat? No, Judith Ann said. I only like pizza I make myself, with goat cheese and artichokes. Judith Ann is quite an excellent cook, my mom explained. In fact, in case you have forgotten, she said, looking straight at me, the reason she's spending the weekend with us is that she's competing in the Junior Chef Cook-Off. Oh, that explains the crazy hat, I said, but I've got to tell you, Judith, Judy, you're missing out on one delicious pizza. We ordered triple cheese with pepperoni. No one calls me Judy, she said without cracking a smile. My full name is Judith Ann. Just like your full name is Henry, which is what I'm going to call you. You can do that, I said with my mouth full, but I won't answer. Ashley and Frankie burst out laughing, shooting some pretty powerful garlic breath into the air. He's been Hank since we were in preschool, Frankie told her. He's definitely not a Henry type, Ashley added. Henrys have gray hair and are math teachers. Yeah, I laughed. I can't even subtract, so you better stick with Hank. Tell me, Judy, Judith Ann, what's your favorite thing to cook, aside from weird pizza? Well, for the Junior Chef Cook-Off this weekend, I'll be preparing my special vegetarian meatballs. Wait a minute! I stopped eating and scratched my head. What makes it a meatball if there's no meat? I mean, if there's no meat, then it's just a ball. Frankie and Ashley cracked up again. Judith Ann was not amused. My vegetarian meatballs are made of chopped eggplant, carrots, mushrooms, white beans, and, of course, breadcrumbs. Oh, they sound so, interesting, Ashley said. And round, Frankie added. Judith Ann seemed pleased. I got the idea from watching my favorite TV show, Country Cooking for the City. They were making vegetarian hot dogs. The idea of a hot dog made of mushed up cauliflower almost made me gag. So I decided it'd be best to just eat some pepperoni pizza and talk about TV shows. Wait a minute. On all of TV, something. These weird new brackets that I read about the UEB. TV, we're going to say times, your favorite show. TV times your favorite show? I said to Judith Ann, taking a bite of my new slice of pizza. My favorite is Zombats. It's about these really scary zombie bats. You'd love it. I don't really like hairy rodents, Judith Ann said. Besides, I only watch cooking shows on TV. Too bad, I said. I like this pizza. You're missing out. I tried to offer Judith Ann a slice, just one juicy piece of pepperoni right in the middle. What? She just made a face. How about if I make you guys some real food, Judith Ann said. I need to practice for the contest anyway, and you can be my tasters. Maybe my cooking will take your taste buds on a new adventure. Oh, that sounds like so much fun, doesn't it, kids? My mom said, with a little too much enthusiasm. Yeah, it really does, Emily agreed. Emily, you have a chore to do first, my dad said. Catherine's cage needs cleaning. When you have a pet, you have to take care of it. Cheerio wagged his tail and started chasing it. When he runs in a circle, he looks just like a Cheerio. That's how he got his name. "Oh, that's right, Daddy," Emily said. Then, turning to Judith Ann, she added, "Catherine is my pet iguana. She's really pretty, and she doesn't like pellet poop build-up." For just a second, Judith Ann looked like she was going to throw up, but she recovered in time to squeak out, I'll be in the kitchen when you're finished." Ashley and Frankie and I had been planning to watch The Swamp Monster for the 14th time, but before I knew it, my mom had herded us into the kitchen to watch Judith Ann wash her eggplants and carrots and mushrooms. So long, Swamp Monster. Goodbye, fun. It was going to be a very vegetarian meatball kind of night. Chapter 2. I honestly don't know why everyone was making such a big deal out of Judith Ann cooking. Doesn't seem too hard to me. Even I can cook. 5 things I can cook with one hand tied behind my back, by Hank Zipzer. 1. Toast. If you're looking for adventure, add grape jelly. 2. A glass of ice water. Don't put in too much ice, or the cubes will stick to your lips. 3. A peanut butter sandwich. Take small bites, or you'll never open your mouth again. 4. A s'more. Make sure you melt the marshmallow really well, or it will taste like the inside of a pillow. Number 5. Trail mix. Put a bunch of raisins in a plastic bag. Leave out the nuts and seeds and all that stuff. That looks like pebbles. Some people might call this a bag of raisins, but I call it Hank's Perfect Trail Mix. Chapter 3. Everyone but Emily and my dad gathered in the kitchen, which seemed to make Judith Ann very happy. I could tell she liked being the center of attention. I mean, why else would a person walk around wearing a puffy chef's hat? First, we had to watch Judith Ann unpack and wash her vegetables. That was about as exciting as watching your toenails grow. She had brought 2 suitcases. One was just for her clothes, and the other was filled to the brim with vegetables. You have to treat vegetables gently, she explained, so they won't bruise. Talking about bruises, I blurted out, you should have seen the one I got last week when we were playing dodgeball. You mean when Nick McKelty nailed you in the knee with the ball? Frankie asked. Your whole kneecap turned totally purple, Ashley added. Yep, I laughed. It looked like Judith Ann's eggplant was growing out of my leg. I reached out and grabbed her eggplant off the kitchen counter and held it to my knee. See how purple and gross I am? I said, doing my best eggplant voice. I had never talked like an eggplant before, but I have to say, I did a pretty good job. I wonder what other vegetables I could sound like. A carrot would have a long voice, and a cauliflower would have a bumpy voice. Frankie and Ashley burst out laughing. My mom didn't. In fact, she gave me that I don't approve look. Hank, be respectful, she said. Judith Ann is trying to win a competition, and we need to support her. Judith Ann took the eggplant from me, put it on our wooden chopping block, and began to cut it into little pieces. Henry, she said, you can help me by peeling the carrots. Sorry, Judith Ann, I said. The only thing I know how to peel is a banana. She wasn't taking no for an answer. Instead, she took out a vegetable peeler and demonstrated how you scrape it along the carrot to take the skin off. All professional cooks have an assistant, she said, handing me the peeler. I'd like you to be mine. Wait a minute. Since when did I become your assistant? Since just now, she said. I took the peeler and started scraping the carrot. Nothing was happening. The peel of the carrot is not going anywhere, I said. It must be glued on. You're using the wrong side, Ashley whispered. You have to use the sharp side. I knew that, I said, which, of course, I didn't. Judith Ann spent the next half hour chopping everything. Carrots, mushrooms, celery, little chunks of toasted bread. Luckily, she stopped short of chopping up her socks. She was chopping so fast that if my mom hadn't stopped her, she would have chopped the kitchen table into little pieces. Hey guys, Frankie whispered to Ashley and me as Judith Ann started rolling her meatballs. Who wants to come with me tomorrow to the hockey game? My dad's got tickets. No thanks, Ashley said. I'm not a hockey fan. I can never even see the little puck. Well, you can count me in, I said. It sounds great. I couldn't stop smiling. That is, until I asked my dad if I could go. He had only one word for me. It was a short word. I'll give you a hint. It starts with the letter N and ends with an O. Chapter 4. I couldn't believe that my father had said no. But, Dad, I wailed, it's a professional hockey game. And the season is almost over. I'm sorry, Hank, he said. Your cousin has come all the way from Chicago, and she is our guest. Tomorrow's the cook-off, and we are all going to support her. Frankie left for his apartment, and the rest of us stood around watching Judith Ann take the meatballs out of the oven. Oh, sorry, the pot. Would you like to taste one, Henry? She asked me. They're actually not bad, Ashley said through her full mouth. A little squishy, but I can get used to them. No offense, Judith Ann, I said, but I like meatballs that don't squish. You know, ones that leave little chunks of meat between your teeth for later. After eating my meatballs, the only thing that will stay in your mouth is a delicious taste, Judith Ann said. Little chunks left behind aren't part of the fine food experience. I had heard enough from Judith Ann about fine food. My face turned red and my mouth went out of control. Listen, I said. I know 50 ways to make a great peanut butter sandwich. So don't talk to me about fine food. My taste buds are as good as yours, maybe even better. Peanut butter should never be left out of its jar, Judith Ann said. It's a snack for 3-year-olds. My mom could tell that I was mad. Okay, everyone, she said in her cheery mom voice. I think we should call it a night. We have to get up early tomorrow to get to the cook-off on time. The cook-off sounds like fun. Can I go too? Ashley asked. Of course, my mom said. We'd love to have you if it's okay with your parents. As if the night hadn't been bad enough, it got worse when my mom sprang some surprising news on me. Judith Ann needed somewhere to sleep, and my mom had offered her my bed without even asking me. But Mom, I whined, that's my bed. The mattress is shaped like my body. It looks forward to me every night. I've set up your sleeping bag on the floor in Emily's room, my mother said. It will be just like camping out. Yeah, camping out next to a creature who doesn't like me and is going to hiss at me all night long. And I don't mean the iguana. Hank, it's only 2 nights, my mom said. It will be fine. At the very mention of... At that very moment, the kitchen door burst open and Emily stuck her head in. Mom! She screamed. You've got to come quickly. Catherine is spitting up a lettuce ball. It's all green and slimy. Okay, let me ask you a question. If you had to spend your Friday night cooking meatless meatballs, then sleep on the hard, cold floor of your know-it-all sister's room with a barfing iguana spitting lettuce balls at your face, how would you feel? Yep, that's the way I felt too. Chapter 5. The Junior Chef Cook-Off was being held at the Manhattan Cooking Institute, which is a fancy school where people go to learn how to be chefs. Since the school is closed on Saturdays, they let the junior chefs take over the school's huge kitchen for the competition. When we arrived, we were greeted at the door by a large round woman wearing a white jacket and a hairnet. Her name was written in red above her pocket. Hello, Miss Smelly, I said, trying so hard to read her name. Young man, she answered, my name is Fern Smiley. I'm really glad, I said, because that's much better than smelly. Ashley quickly covered her mouth, trying to keep in a laugh. I snickered too. My mom put a firm hand on my shoulder, as if to say, that'll be quite enough of that. My niece, Judith Ann Zipser, is part of the cook-off, she said to Ms. Smiley, who, by the way, wasn't smiling. I've brought my ingredients with me, Judith Ann said. Ms. Smiley looked down at the suitcase Judith Ann was carrying. Very good, she said. I'm glad to see you've followed our directions. Where should I go? Judith Ann asked. Her voice sounded shaky, like she was nervous, but that surprised me. The night before, she had acted so confident, like she was queen of all cooks. What are you waiting for, Junior Chef Zipzer? Ms. Smiley snapped. The competition is due to begin in 5 minutes. Our kitchens run like hands on a clock, perfectly on time. Proceed to kitchen station number 7. Tick-tock, young lady. Judith Ann picked up her suitcase, dashed across the large room to kitchen station number 7, and quickly started unpacking her vegetables. We followed her. Junior chefs, Miss Smiley called out, please look on your cutting board for a printed sheet of your safety rules. You must read it and sign it, your name, to show that you understand and will follow the rules. Judith Ann picked up the paper. She had a funny look on her face. Henry, she said to me, remember, you're my assistant. You have to read these rules too. I picked up the sheet of paper. The words all floated around on the page like fish swimming in a tank. I'm not that good at reading, I said to her. You'll have to read this yourself. I don't have time, Judith Ann snapped. Can't you see I'm peeling my vegetables? I'll get Ashley to help, I said. She's such a good reader. She could read out backwards, standing on her head with one eye closed. Ashley came over and read the rules while Judith Ann sat up. Fine, Judith Ann said. I agree to everything. Who has a pen I can use? I reached into my back pocket to look for a pen, but all I found in my pocket was a brown paper bag, lunch. I pulled it out and handed it to Ashley. Hold this and don't eat my lunch, I warned her. I made it myself. And that's why I never touch it, Ashley said with a laugh. I found the pen at the bottom of the backpack and handed it to Judith Ann, who signed the paper. Okay, she said, now we're ready to go. We? I asked. Yes, Henry, you're my assistant. I sighed, handed Ashley my backpack, lunch bag, and took my place next to Judith Ann. I looked around the room. 8 mini kitchens were set up. Each one had a stove, an oven, a counter for chopping, and a tiny sink. Stations 1 through 6 were already occupied by serious-looking kid chefs. They all looked nervous, but none of them were as nervous as Judith Ann. Hank, she said, her voice sounding very scared, when the bell rings for the cook-off to start, we have to be a perfect team. You wash, I chop. The end. I looked out to the audience and saw Ashley give me a thumbs up. I gave her one back. Stop clowning around, I heard a stern voice say. Our chefs are required to have a perfect attitude about this competition. A serious attitude, too. I spun around to see Miss Smiley squinting at me over the top of her glasses. Oh, I said, I'm not one of the chefs. I'm just a vegetable washer. He's my assistant, Judith Ann explained. And it won't happen again. No, it won't, Miss Smiley said, because assistants are not allowed in this contest. Each chef must do his or her own work, start to finish. Tough luck, I said to Judith Ann as I started walking away. I wish I could stay, but rules are rules. Then, turning to Ms. Smiley, I added, I'm not really the assistant type anyway. In my kitchen, I'm the main guy. Before she could answer, Ms. Smiley's pocket started to ring, or at least the phone in her pocket started to ring. "Chef Smiley here," she said, putting the phone to her ear. She listened for a minute and then said, "You can't make it for even an hour? Okay, I have no choice but to understand." She put the phone back in her pocket and shook her head. "This is terrible news," she said to us. "One of our junior chefs just called in sick." "I hope he doesn't get sick from eating his own cooking," I joked. Ms. Smiley ignored me. "This is unacceptable," she said. "We have announced that there are 8 contestants. That's what we promised." She straightened her hairnet and looked like she was about to panic. Then, suddenly, her expression changed. I'm not going to say it looked happy, but at least she didn't look like she was going to explode. Ms. Smiley laid a beefy hand on my shoulder. "Perhaps I could use you," she said. "Use me to do what?" "I heard you say that in your kitchen, you're the main guy." "You heard correctly," I said, puffing out my chest. "Excellent! You will take station 6. We need all stations full for the photographer. Photographs. I like the sound of that. The photos will run in all the news, in all the New York newspapers," she said. "The cook-off is receiving great attention because our grand prize is so special." "Really? What does the winner get?" I asked. "The grand prize is a television appearance on Country Cooking for the City," explained Judith Ann, who had been listening to our whole conversation. "But you don't have to concern yourself with that, Henry, since I'm going to win it." "I've never been on TV." But deep down, I was already felt like I should be. All I would have to do is flash a little of the old Zipser attitude, and boom! I have my own TV show. To be honest, I couldn't resist the idea. "I'm your guy," I said to Ms. Smiley. "You can call me Mr. Station Number 6. "But Henry," Judith Ann said, "you can't cook. And even if you could, you have no food." "Don't worry, young man," Ms. Smiley said. "There is already food at Station Number 6. The contestant sent it in advance." "I hope it's something I know how to cook," I said. "Of course it is," Ms. Smiley answered. "It's quite a simple dish. Artichokes stuffed with crab legs and capers." "No problem," I said. "Okay, truth time. I have no idea what an artichoke was, and I had never even heard the word caper. As for crab legs, all I could do was hope the crab wasn't going to pinch me." "Are you ready to participate?" Ms. Smiley asked. "You bet," I exclaimed with a big smile. That's what my face and mouth said, but the rest of my body was screaming, "Hank! No!" What did you get yourself into? Chapter 6. 3 ways I could get out of this mess by Hank Zipzer. 1. I could put on a big floppy clown shoes and do a crazy clown dance. Wait a minute. I forgot my clown shoes at home. Wait a minute, I don't have clown shoes. Never did. 2. I could run outside and get a taxi and ask the driver to take me to the North Pole. Wait a minute, I don't have any money. Wait a minute, I do have a nickel stuck in a gummy bear at the bottom of my backpack. 3. I could run over to my mom, throw on my jacket, grab my lunch bag, and run for it. Wait a minute. My lunch bag. Did you hear what I just said? My lunch bag. Yes, that's the answer. Chapter 7. To be truthful, my lunch bag wasn't entirely the answer. It was only half of the answer. The contest was starting in less than a minute. Ms. Smiley hurried me over to station number 6. Your ingredients are laid out on the cutting board, she said to me. There will be 2 judges. Do the best you can. Just make sure you look busy for the photographers. With that, she disappeared into the big kitchen space and left me staring at the cutting board in front of me. There were a couple of crab legs still inside their shells. I thought I saw them wiggle. There was a jar of little green raisin-type things in juice. I figured those were the capers. And right in the middle of the cutting board was some baseball-sized green things that looked like cactuses. They had a whole lot of leaves, and each leaf had a sharp thorn at the end of it. I know this because when I picked one up, it felt like a needle had pricked my finger. Ow! I screamed. Judith Ann looked up at me from her station. That happened to me the first time, too. I picked up an artichoke, she said. Those things should come with a warning sign. And a pair of gloves, I added. There's no way I can make anything out of this. It's dangerous. You have to cook something, Judith Ann said. You don't want to look bad in front of the photographers. Never fear, Hank is here, I said, with a plan. Actually, half a plan. I bolted from my station. I grabbed my lunch bag from Ashley. I knew exactly what was in there because I had made it myself. A peanut butter and grape jelly sandwich with some extra strawberry jam thrown in for fun. A banana with no brown spots. A box of chocolate milk with straw. A plastic bag with a chocolate chip cookie and an oatmeal raisin cookie because I didn't want my tongue to get bored. And a happy birthday napkin left over from Emily's reptile birthday party. What are you doing, Hank? Ashley asked. There was no time to answer. I made it back to my station with my lunch bag just as the starting bell rang. Ms. Smiley's voice came over the loudspeaker. Attention, junior chefs, she announced. You have 45 minutes to create your favorite dish. After that, our judges will perform a taste test and select our 2 finalists. You cannot look at a written recipe. You cannot pick your nose, touch your hair, or otherwise you'll have dirty fingers. You cannot borrow another contestant's food. Now, ready, set, cook! The first thing I did was push the artichoke and crab legs off the cutting board, being careful not to get pricked again. Then I put my brown paper bag right in the center of the board. I looked around at the other kitchen stations. The chefs were hard at work. In one station, a curly-haired girl wearing goggles was chopping tomatoes. Boy, were they juicy. It's a good thing she had on those goggles because the tomato seeds were squirting all over her face. Next to her, a teenage boy with green streaks in his hair was chopping onions. He was crying like a baby. He could have used the other girl's goggles. Right next to Judith Ann was a girl named Lily Chun, who's in the 5th grade at my school. I know because her class comes to help us during language arts, and she tutored me in spelling. She was really nice when I couldn't remember how to spell any of my words except for cat. I could tell Lily was going to bake a cake because she was pouring flour into a bowl. It looked like she was in the middle of a white dust storm. There was flour everywhere, on her hands, on her apron, even on her nose. "Hank!" a voice called from the audience. It was Ashley. "Get going! Do something! You've just been standing there for 10 minutes. "Oh, right," I said. I could feel my mind coming back to earth. Sometimes it wanders far away without even asking permission. I want to concentrate on what's happening in front of me, but my mind has ideas of its own. I looked around and saw Ms. Smiley walking up and down between the kitchen stations. She was loudly slurping on an iced coffee through a straw. "Where is the artichoke?" she asked me. Slurp, slurp. I rejected it to protect my 9 other fingertips. But don't worry, I have something else to cook. She nodded and walked away. "You'd better hurry up," Judith Ann whispered. "I already have all my mushrooms scrubbed and chopped." I picked up my lunch bag, turned it upside down, and let everything fall onto the counter. I took my sandwich out of its plastic bag. Okay, that was something. I was on the road. I just didn't know where it was going. I looked around and saw that everyone else was chopping something. So I picked up the knife and chopped my sandwich into little bites. I did the same thing with the banana. I'm not very good with a knife, so I chopped slowly to make sure my fingers stayed on my hand. Then I took out the cookies. I took a bite of the chocolate chip one. "Hank, stop eating your ingredients," I told myself. "Otherwise, your entire project is going to be inside your stomach." I chopped the cookies into little pieces and then stood back and thought about the pile of food in front of me. I wish I could tell you that I had a bright idea with what to do with it, but I didn't, and time was running out. My eye darted around the room, searching for an idea. All I saw was a bunch of kids hard at work, and Ms. Smiley pacing around with her iced coffee, Slurp, slurp. There it is, I thought. Slurp, slurp, slurp. This answer to what I was going to do was right in front of me. Chapter 8. I stuck my hand in the air and waved it around wildly, trying to get Ms. Smiley's attention. At last, she noticed and came stomping over to me. "What is it now, young man?" she asked. "Do you have a blender I can use?" I asked. "There is a blender on the counter right in front of you," she snapped. "Oh, right," I said. "Sometimes I can't do two things at once, like think and look. I suggest you concentrate," she said. "You're wasting precious time." She was right. I noticed that Judith Ann was already putting her meatballs into the pot. I scooped up all the pieces of my chopped lunch and carefully dropped them into the blender jar. Then I pulled the straw from the carton of chocolate milk and poked it inside. Turning the carton upside down, I squeezed it and watched the milk squirt into the blender through the straw. I made sure I got every last drop out of the carton. "It's showtime," I called to Judith Ann. With a big grin, I pushed the blender's start button. Whoops! I had forgotten to put the top on. Chocolate milk and bananas and cookies and chunks of sandwich flew out the top of the blender and landed smack in the middle of my face. A few chunks sprayed onto Judith Ann's counter. "Henry!" she cried. "Turn off the blender and put the top on it. Don't get your mess on my meatballs." I switched off the blender and put as much of the goop as I could back inside. "6-minute warning," Ms. Smiley called over the loudspeaker. I put the top back on the blender and turned it on. At least everything stayed inside this time. I stood there watching my lunch swirl around in the blender. The banana, the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and the cookies turned to liquid, blending with the chocolate milk to make a thick, frothy smoothie. "Look at that," I said, pointing to the glass jar of the blender. "It's a work of art." "It's a mess," Judith Ann said. "Fine cooking is not throwing things into a blender and hoping for the best." "I'm not hoping for the best," I snapped back. "It is the best." Truthfully, I had no idea what my smoothie was going to taste like. It did turn a pretty ugly shade of mud brown, not a color that makes your taste buds stand up and say, "Hello!" I poured my smoothie into 2 glasses, one for each judge, and put each glass on its own little plate. "Psst, Hank!" I heard Ashley call from the audience. I watch cooking shows on TV all the time. The winners always make their dish look pretty. You need to dress those plates up. The only thing I could think of that was the half-eaten box of gummy bears in my backpack. I left my station and ran to get it. Of course, it wasn't there where I thought I put it. I had to unzip a little pocket until I found it buried beneath the crumpled up spelling test. By the way, I got a D minus, which is better than an F, I suppose. When I returned to the counter, I emptied the box into my hand and spread the colorful gummy bears around the edge of the plates. Ashley was right. All of a sudden, my smoothies looked like a party on a plate. Now, all I had to do was wait for the judges. When the buzzer rang, the two judges appeared. Our first judge is Maxine Nosbaum, the head pastry chef at Cafe Sweet Tooth. Ms. Smiley announced. Ms. Nosbaum waved her hand at us. Our other judge, Ms. Smiley continued, is Bob Bones, master chef of one of our city's finest restaurants. Robert's Kitchen. There's an original name. He looked like he was going to be a strict judge. I stood at my station while the two judges went down the row, starting at each kitchen station. Number 1, they stopped and chatted with each junior chef, including Goggle Girl and Crying Onion Boy. At each chef's station, the judges took one bite of the dish and made notes on their clipboards. When they got to Judith Ann, I could see that her hands were shaking. She tried to smile, but her lips were quivering so much it looked like they were going to do the chicken dance. It's my pleasure to invite you to taste my special meatless meatballs, she told the judges. I could tell she had been practicing that line all the way from Chicago. Chef Bones and Chef Nosbaum each popped a meatball into their mouths. I waited for them to scream in horror, but just the opposite happened. Ms. Nosbaum actually made a purring noise around like a kitty cat. I saw Bob Bones wiggle his mustache. I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad sign. Then the judges turned to me. What have we here? Ms. Nosbaum asked. An entire lunch in a glass, I said proudly. I call it Hank's Peanut Butter and Jelly Smoothie. With surprise ingredients. From her station, I heard Judith Ann let out a big sigh, and the judges were supposed to take only one sip of my smoothie. But after that sip, they took another and another until they had each finished their entire glass. Chef Bones even licked his mustache clean because he didn't want to miss a drop. I could see Ashley out in the audience clapping her hands. The two judges walked off with Miss Smiley, and I saw them all whispering in the corner. I was surprised at how nervous I had suddenly become. My stomach went from calm to crazy in a matter of seconds. The judges have selected 2 finalists, Ms. Smiley said. They will compete against each other in tomorrow's final cook-off, which will take place on the set of Country Cooking for the City. The room became silent as everyone in the audience moved to the edge of their chairs. Finalist number 1, Maxine Nosbaum declared, is Judith Ann Zipzer, who impressed us with her delicious meatless meatballs. Judith Ann started to squeal and then slapped herself over the mouth to stop the sound. What came out sounded more like a burp. Our second finalist, Bob Bones announced, has produced a creative and original sweet delight. I glanced over at Lily Chun, whose entire head of hair had turned white from the flour she used to make her cake. She was looking pretty confident, and she had every reason to be. Her cake was beautifully decorated with flower petals. And the second winner, junior chef, da-da-da-da. Lily stepped forward, ready to receive her award. Hank Zipser, for his unique and yummy peanut butter and jelly smoothie with surprise ingredients. I couldn't believe my ears. I threw my arms in the air and jumped as high as my short legs would take me and hollered, "Let's hear it for me!" Ashley screamed my name, and my mom was hopping around in a circle. Before I knew it, a photographer was pulling Judith Ann and me out from behind our stations and snapping our picture. The other junior chefs came to shake our hands, even Lily Chun. "Isn't this great?" I said to Judith Ann. "We're in the finals. Now we can be cousins and friends." She didn't answer. She just turned and walked out of the room. I could tell she was upset, but I didn't know why. I mean, the judges liked her meatballs, but they probably thought my smoothie was more fun. Hey, it's not my fault you can't drink a meatball through a straw. Chapter 9. There are only 2 words that could describe the mood in our apartment that night. Dark gray cloud. Okay, that's 3 words, but forget the idea. The dark gray cloud, also known as Judith Ann Zipser, was in a major bad mood. From the way she was acting, you would have thought she had lost the cooking competition. "Cheer up, Judy," I said to her as she sat at the kitchen table, polishing her vegetables. "You're one of the 2 finalists." "First of all, Henry," she snapped, "it's not Judy, it's Judith Ann. We've gone over that before. And second of all, my victory means nothing when the other finalist is you and your peanut butter mess." Ouch. That girl had one sharp tongue. I was never so glad to hear the doorbell ring. I raced out of the kitchen with my ears still burning. It was my grandfather, Papa Pete, at the door. He was wearing the red running suit he always wears on the weekends. Comfort first is his motto. Papa Pete's face was so happy that the mood in the house changed immediately. "Hey, Hanky," he shouted as he came in the door. "Give your grandpa a big hug." Papa Pete is so tall that when he hugs you, he lifts you right off your feet. "I hear you're a champion cook," he said. "Just like me." Papa Pete ran the Crunchy Pickle, which is a deli on Broadway, a block away from our apartment. My mom runs it now. She's into health food and is trying to make luncheon meats good for you. Her specialty is salami, soy lami, which is a combination of gray soy stuff and other non-salami type things. It's got everything in it but taste. Papa Pete still works at the sandwich counter at lunchtime and slips real salami into the sandwiches. As always, you know when someone's eating a Papa Pete sandwich because they're smiling while they're chewing. Papa Pete, you won't believe what I did, I told him. My winning dish came to me in a flash. Your mother told me, he said, with a grin. Lunch in a glass. I love the sound of that. And if it wins, I could become really famous. First, I'll demonstrate it on TV. And then, every restaurant in New York will have it on their menu. We could even put a sign in front of the Crunchy Pickle that says, home of Hank Zipser's famous lunch in a glass. We'll have lines around the block. We'll have to hire our own security guard. Slow down there, Hanky, Papa Pete said. You haven't won yet. Don't tell Judith Ann, I whispered in his ear, but I really hope I do. It'll be our secret, he whispered back. We hooked our pinky fingers together, then pulled them apart. It was our code for keeping a secret. Holding up a brown paper bag he had brought, Papa Pete said in a loud voice, Attention, Zipser family! I brought dinner. Pickles, potato salad, and sandwiches. Half pastrami, half soy lami. And guess which ones are going to be left over, I said. I like soy lami, Emily said, coming into the room, wearing her iguana around her neck like a scarf. That's because all 5 of your taste buds are asleep on your tongue, I said. For your information, the human tongue has between 2,000 and 8,000 taste buds, Emily said, and all of mine are wide awake. Thank you very much. Really? Because I thought I heard them snoring. Papa Pete let out one of his great big laughs, and the kind that make his whole body shake. Don't encourage him, Pete, my father said, looking up from his crossword puzzle. Reward Hank when his grades improve, not for his wisecracks. Papa Pete and my mom took the sandwiches and pickles out of the bag. Come have dinner with us, my mom called to Judith Ann. We have a delicious deli sandwich waiting for you. The kitchen door swung open and Judith Ann stuck her head out. Congratulations to you, Papa Pete said to her, reaching out to shake her hand. I heard you won the judges, too. I love a good meatball myself. My secret is lots of garlic. What's yours? No meat, she told him. Oh, Papa Pete said. I never would have thought of that. Meatless? Huh? Oh. So, I bet you will pick one of those soy lami sandwiches then. I can't join you for dinner, Judith Ann said. I have to practice making my dish one more time. Everything has to be perfect for the final tomorrow. Ms. Dark Gray Cloud disappeared back into the kitchen. "She's a serious one, young woman," Papa Pete said. "Okay, who wants soy lami?" "Me!" Emily shouted. "Not me," I shouted. "I'll take the real pastrami and lots of mustard." "Oh, mustard," Papa Pete said. "I knew I forgot something." "That's all right." I hopped to my feet. "I'll get it." As I walked into the kitchen, I expected to see piles of vegetables all over the kitchen counter and Judith Ann chopping up a storm. But that is not what I saw at all. What I saw was something I never thought I'd see in my whole life. Judith Ann was crying. And by crying, I don't mean a few tears. She had turned herself into a major waterworks factory. She was sitting on the floor with her head in her hands, the tears squirting out from her eyes like lawn sprinklers. "Judith Ann," I said, "did you cut yourself when you were chopping your vegetables?" She shook her head, "No." "Did you fall down?" Again, she shook her head, "No." "Well, were you attacked by one of your eggplants?" I thought that would make her laugh, but it didn't. In fact, she cried even louder. I didn't know what I was supposed to do, so just sat down next to her on the floor. I pulled a dish towel off the oven door handle and handed it to her. We just sat there for a minute while she wiped her tears in the dish towel. "I think I know what it is," I said at last. "You're homesick." Boy, do I know how that feels. My school had a sleepover at the beach for one night. Don't tell anyone, but I spent the whole night crying into my sleeping bag. "That's not it," Judith Ann said. "I'm not homesick. I'm scared." I looked around our kitchen to see what was so scary. I didn't see anything except regular kitchen stuff. "Are you scared of the refrigerator?" I asked. "It's tall, but it doesn't bite." "You don't understand how much I need to win this contest," Judith Ann said. "I told everyone at my school I was going to win. I even told my principal, Ms. Denny, and I'm afraid I might not. That's what I'm scared of." Look at it this way, Judy. You're going to come in first or second. Either way, that's not bad. "I need to come in first." "Why? What's the big deal?" "I'm going to tell you a secret, Hank. Cooking is the only thing I'm really good at. But you're so smart and confident and everything," I told her. "It seemed like you can do anything." "I'm terrible at school," she said. "Reading is really hard for me, and I can't spell either." "Welcome to the club," I almost shouted. When my teacher tells me to sound out a word, I have no idea what she's talking about. The only sound I hear in my brain is skidding to a stop. I stuck out my hand to shake hers, but she did not take it. "My parents are always telling me that I just have to try harder. I'll get it," she said in a voice that sounded really sad. But no matter how hard I try, I get bad grades. When I discovered cooking, it was the first time I felt like I was really good at something. I've won every contest I've ever been in, but this is the big one. If I win, it would make my parents so proud. I've been trying to make my dad proud since I was a baby," I said. and I always come up a little short, which stinks because I'm short too. Judith Ann actually laughed a little. That made me feel better for her, until I realized that my lunch in a glass was going to be a big problem for her. Way down deep, I knew it was a winner. Like, Judith Ann, I said, getting up, why don't you just relax and have a sandwich with us? You don't need to practice. You're already a great cook. I wish I could be relaxed like you, she said, but I have to make the recipe one more time, just to be extra sure. You have a sandwich, I'm going to stay here. As I walked back through the swinging door into the dining room, I thought about Judith Ann. Papa Pete always says you can't judge a book by its cover. I never understood until now. On the outside, Judith Ann acted like she was the queen of the world, but on the inside, she was just like me, all shaky like a bowl of jelly. There he is, Papa Pete said as I took a seat at the table. One pastrami sandwich and one dill pickle. Coming right up. You forgot to bring the mustard, Emily pointed out. Hank would forget his head if it wasn't attached to his neck, my dad said with a snort. You're going to do so well tomorrow, honey, my mom said. She always tries to say something nice after my dad says something mean. He's going to knock their socks off, Papa Pete said, and make me a promise, Hanky. When they pick you tomorrow, be on Country Cooking for the City, you be sure to make me your assistant. Everyone on the television has an assistant. Boy, oh boy, the guys on my bowling team are going to be so impressed. I'll have to give autographs at the bowling alley. Papa Pete let out one of his big laughs. I could tell he loved the idea of being on TV. So did I. But the problem was that so did Judith Ann. Chapter 10. Is this the TV station? I asked my mom the next morning as we turned into a revolving door in a big glass building. This is the address they gave me, my mom said. My mom, Dad, and Papa Pete were there, along with Frankie and Ashley, and of course, Judith Ann. All of us walked into the huge lobby with big couches and hundreds of TV screens all over the walls. The guard took us to the elevator. What floor, my dad asked. 35, said the guard, answered, pushing the button. That's where it all happens. And boy, was he right. When the doors opened, we stepped out and immediately found ourselves smack in the middle of the Country Cooking for the City set. Wow, said Papa Pete. It looks so much bigger on TV. Dude, Frankie whispered to me, this is awesome. Hank, look, Ashley said. There's the kitchen where the chefs work, and there are the cameras. Aren't you nervous? I wasn't nervous. I was proud to be there. I was proud that my friends and family would be there to see me win. This could be the best day of my life. I turned to Frankie. It looks right up there with the time Dad and I won that three-legged race at the root beer bust at the school. Remember that, Dad? I remember, he replied. I remember, replied my dad. Oh, there it is. I remember. I ripped my pants and had to spend $14 to get them fixed, he answered. Oh my gosh, Ashley said, grabbing my arm. Oh my gosh, look who's coming to get us. Walking across the studio to us was Chuck Hall, the host of Country Cooking for the City. He was tall, with a huge head of blonde hair, and teeth as white as marshmallows. When she saw him, Judith Ann actually let out a shriek. She stepped forward and stuck out her hand. What an honor to meet you, she said to Chuck. I've never missed one of your shows. Chuck smiled. I could tell he was expecting the rest of us to chime in too. To be honest, I had never seen one of his shows, but I knew better than to say that out loud. So, Chuck said to Judith Ann, I assume you're one of my finalists. Who's the other one? He's your guy, Frankie told Chuck, pointing to me. Hank Zipzer. Nice to meet you, Mr. Zipzer, Chuck said with a marshmallow grin. It's Zipzer, not Zipper. And by the way, do you know what has 137 teeth and no cavities? A zipper. Everyone laughed, but Chuck. If you don't mind, son, I'll do the jokes, he said. Now, follow me and we'll get you kids set up. My family and friends got to sit in the audience seats. Judith Ann and I were led over to the kitchen counter, which was in front of the cameras. Ms. Smiley was there, setting up the kitchen tools on the counter. I have your blender, young man, she said. Thank you, Miss S, I said. I would have called her Miss Smiley, but I was afraid that smelly would come out of my mouth instead. And Judith Ann, she went on, I have your mixing bowls and skillet. Both of you may begin placing your food supplies on the counter. I reached into my paper bag and took out the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the cookies, and the milk, and the banana. Way down at the bottom, I was surprised to see a pickle and half a plastic pastrami sandwich in a plastic bag. I knew Papa Pete had snuck that in case I got hungry. That's what I love about Papa Pete. Are we going to be on TV? I asked Chuck's assistant, who was walking by with a clipboard. The winner of this match is, she said, without looking at me. Cool. What does the loser get? A hearty handshake, she said with a laugh. I didn't think that was funny at all. All of a sudden, the lights in the studio went down, and two bright lights lit up Judith Ann and me. Chuck walked out and said, Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our two finalists for the title of Junior Chef Champion. There were 7 people in the audience. 6 were my family and friends, and 1 was the guard who brought us up in the elevator. But when they all clapped for us, it sounded like there was at least 10 people. Chuck looked over at us and spoke in almost a whisper. "This is your big moment, kids. Are you ready?" I nodded. Judith Ann gulped. I wish I could have given her some of my confidence. "Then it's time," Chuck said, in his big show business voice. And just like that, the contest was on. Chapter 11. We had exactly 45 minutes to complete our dishes. Judith Ann got to work. As she chopped her vegetables, I could see sweat forming on her forehead. "Maybe you should take it easy on those poor little eggplants," I whispered to her. I thought I just heard one screaming. "This is no time for jokes," she said. "As I told you, this means everything to me." I hadn't forgotten that. I was just trying to help her relax. I knew it wasn't going to take the whole time to make my peanut butter and jelly smoothie with surprise ingredients, but I wanted to look busy, so I took my time setting the peanut butter and jelly sandwich into the bite-sized pieces. That took about 10 seconds. So I tried to go even slower with the banana. After I peeled it, one tiny piece at a time, I waved to Frankie and Ashley sitting in the audience. They waved back with big smiles. Judith Ann had finished the vegetables and was rolling up them into 3 plump, meatless meatballs. "Look at you go, Judy," I said. "Those meatballs look really good. And round." She glanced up at me like she was going to say something. Just then, one of the meatballs she was working on rolled out of her hand and onto the floor. "Oh no!" she screamed. "Look what you made me do!" "I didn't mean for that to happen. Honest." "I know, Hank. It wasn't your fault. I'm just nervous." I turned back to my blender and started to crumble the cookies into the jar. Judith Ann put her 2 meatballs into the frying pan and rolled them around with a wooden spoon. Suddenly, I heard her shout, "Oh no! What's wrong with me today?" she said. "My meatball is crumbling." I looked over into her frying pan and saw that one of her meatless meatballs had come apart. It rolled like a vegetable pancake. "I am such a loser," she went on, sounding like she was going to cry. I practice, and I can't do anything right." "Hey, do I ever know that feeling?" I said. "I practice my spelling words all night long, and when I get to class, I have no idea where they are. They're sure not in my head. I wish I were making your peanut butter and jelly smoothie," she said. "It seems so easy." She definitely had a point. She was chopping and rolling and frying and doing all kinds of complicated cooking stuff. All I was doing was filling a blender and flipping a switch. As I reached into my bag to get the carton of chocolate milk, I smelled the pickle at the bottom. I looked over at Judith Ann. She was concentrating very hard on her last meatball rolling around in her pan and making sure that it was fully cooked. It was then that I knew what I had to do. I reached into my bag and pulled out Papa Pete's dill pickle. When no one was watching, I dropped it into the blender and put the top on. Then I flipped the switch. I smiled to myself. Hank's peanut butter and jelly smoothie with surprise ingredients was sure going to have one big surprise ingredient now. By the time the 45 minutes were up, I had poured my smoothie into a glass and decorated it with gummy bears I brought with me in my pocket. Then I popped it into the red and white striped straw. Judith Ann had placed her one lonely meatball on top of the pancake one and dripped some red sauce over both of them. It actually looked pretty good. She had turned her mistake into her own surprise. Chuck Hall picked up his microphone and stood between us. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said to the same 7 people in the audience, "the Junior Chef Cook-Off is now over, and all that's left to do is the tasting. I'm going to take one taste of each dish and decide who will appear with me on Country Cooking for the City." Chuck picked up Judith Ann's plate, took a big sniff, then popped a bite of the meatball into his mouth. "Very tasty," he said, "and I love the creative way you designed your plate. A meatless meatball on a meatless pancake. Very creative." Then he turned to me, picked up the glass, and smiled. "This looks yummy," he said. "I love a good smoothie." He raised the glass to his lips and took a big sip through the straw. I waited, but not for long. He spit the smoothie out of his mouth like it was on fire, and flew out of his mouth like a fire hose. "What did you put in here?" he gasped. "It's so sour." "That was my special ingredient," I explained. With my old Zipser attitude, I thought it would give my smoothie a personality. Chuck took a paper napkin and wiped his tongue to try and get rid of the taste from his mouth. It was pretty clear that he did not think peanut butter and pickles was a good combination. "This is the easiest contest I've ever judged," he said, still spitting into the napkin. "The winner and the contestant who will appear on television is Judy Zipser." "Excuse me, sir," I whispered to him. "She really likes it if you call her Judith Ann." Judith Ann was the happiest person I had ever seen in my whole life. In the middle of her happy dance, she suddenly stopped and turned to me. "I'm so sorry, Hank," she said. "I'm not," I answered. "You deserve to win. Besides, I still get my hearty handshake from Chuck Hall." Ashley and Frankie had run down from the audience to be with me. "We were sure you were going to win," Ashley said. "Yeah, what happened?" "Hankster?" Frankie asked. I just shrugged. My secret ingredient was going to stay my secret forever. Chapter 12. A Pop Quiz by Hank Zipser. Judith Ann got to decorate her meatless meatball to demonstrate her meatless meatball on Country Cooking for the City. Your job on this quiz is to pick the right thing that really happened. She dropped her whole bowl of chopped vegetables all over Chuck Hall's shoes. she thanked me and told the whole world that I, Hank Zipser, gave her the confidence to win. When she was concentrating, when she was accepting her award, she opened her mouth to say thank you, but a burp came out. Answer. The answer is B. Judith Ann gave me the biggest shout out I've ever gotten in my whole life. So, I guess you could say I won too. The end. Well, that's a wrap for this one. Stay tuned for the next installment of Here's Hank. There's, I think, 3 more books to go that I have here, and the rest are currently being held semi-hostage, quarantined in our unit at work. So hopefully I can arrange to get my mitts on them, or else, like it or lump it, we're going to be reading Little House on the Prairie because that's the only other Braille book I have. So, take care, have a good time, enjoy your stay-at-home order, and, you know, stay at home unless, of course, you don't have to or you don't want to or you have somewhere to go. On that note, have a good day, and we'll see you next time.
Screen curtain on. 10% battery. Low power mode. Close. Button.
Once I shut this off.
Camera chooser. Stop recording. Button.